Welcome to the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated Diversity and Disability YouTube channel. Your Life, Your Voice program, where self-advocates and professionals in the disability sector are interviewed. The Diversity and Disability Project would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continued connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Nothing about us without us. We pay respects to all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years and still working tirelessly for their rights, supporting others with disabilities and human rights for all. This channel is for people with disabilities who aspire to seek self-advocacy role models to inspire change in their everyday lives. Nothing about us without us. Choice and control are central themes. Every interview is as unique as you and I. And it has our fundamental universal human rights ethos of respect for persons with disabilities, having their views heard and acknowledged. After all, it's all in the name. Your life, your voice. Be the voice of change in your life. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Julie Skibber, so I'd like to welcome my co-host, Lara McFarlane. Hi, Lara, how you doing?
Hi, Julie. I'm going well. Yes.
You go on.
Oh, I was going to say I'm very excited to be here today. First, I just want to acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Bunurong people, as we all are on stolen, unceded lands across so-called Australia. And yeah, I'm excited to be here today with my friend and to introduce you to Ali Scott. I first became aware of Ali a few years ago through her work on transport issues around accessibility to transport in Victoria, through her work with the DRC, which we will speak about. And I'm proud now to call Ali one of my friends. So welcome, Ali. Thank you for agreeing to be here today.
Thank you. So lovely to be with you both. Thank you.
I forgot to introduce you. I was going to say you're a proud disabled woman, but could you do a brief introduction to yourself?
Okay. So I define myself primarily as someone with a hidden disability. I'm a deaf person, but you know, technology has changed so much since I was a child, when I was building relationships with no hearing at all. And now I can be connected with my headphones to you, sitting in a Zoom room, and I can hear every word you're saying. It's incredible, really, how the world has changed since I've been alive. So I'm very lucky to be alive now in terms of, you know, the breadth of different experiences this has given me. But of course, I identify very strongly as a person with a disability because I communicate differently. I attend to what I hear, and my childhood was very much as someone who didn't hear at all, who was profound. I still am profoundly deaf, and so yes, that really informs both how I go about the world and how I form relationships so much. I didn't get to introduce what I do, which probably was what you were asking.
I'll ask you at some point if you don't tell me. So,
at present, I'm the project manager at DRC Advocacy, which is a Melbourne-based advocacy organisation that's been a campaigns-based grassroots advocacy organisation since 1981. And the wonderful thing about being there is that the board members were there campaigning on the streets in 1981. And so it still has this sense of being up at the forefront of the civil rights movement for people with disabilities, and that's why I love being there. And I continue to work on the Transport for All campaign, which is struggling to ensure that our government realises that its public services must be accessible for everyone. And so that's my current focus. And I think we'll probably talk about the other focuses at some point too.
Yeah, we will. Yes, and I just want to agree with you that I think Disability Resources Centre stands above, and so many disability organisations. It's been around for such a long time, and it has this really strong history of being disability led and of on the ground grassroots activism, as you said. We need more of that. Which I think is changing, and we are, there's, well, anyway, hopefully glass half full. I know we can all hear that you have an English accent, and I understand that you grew up in England and that you spent most of your life living and working in London, and then you moved to Melbourne about 5 years ago, I think. How was that? How was this move to Melbourne?
Oh my goodness, it was ghastly. It's really given me an insight, obviously, into the gazillions of migrants the world over, because it's a jolly hard journey to make when you're a grown-up. Obviously, for me, a key thing was integrating myself into a community where I was not a known entity. And at what point, when you've been standing next to people, do you say, by the way, I can't understand anything you're saying? And you don't, because this whole thing about having a disability, a hidden disability, is so irksome to manage because it's a constant thing. And do you say it again, as people come and go in a group, do you repeat it 20 times in an afternoon or So it's really, really hard. And of course, the way that you interact is different. And I was going to say, and I'm so glad to be here. I feel really blessed to be in Melbourne in so many ways. There are things that are better about different places. And one thing that I really loved about London is that it's very at ease with difference. And I think that the dominant culture in Australia, less so in Melbourne, but the dominant culture is much more about, it's extremely able, isn't it? It's very sport-led, it's quite masculine. And if you compare the culture at the school gates in London, where people would just be, humour is about moaning about shit. It's about people are not short to talk and are not shy to come forward about all the awful stuff. And here you don't have that at all. It's really uncomfortable to say, actually, I'm really feeling terrible. I just want to cry. That doesn't happen. That took a lot of adjustment here, that you're supposed to turn up and be, yes, here I am, hello. No, it's really, really hard. So it was jolly rough.
I relate to that. I was actually born in England, and I spent different parts of my time living in England, and it is different, yes. And I found there was much more potential, to say what you thought and not be afraid to say something different to what other people were saying. There seemed to be more acceptance and less offence. I think in Australia, when I came back to Australia after my last time there, I found, I'd say what I thought, but the people would be offended that they thought I was somehow challenging them when saying what I thought.
Yes, but it's terrible, isn't it? Because I would feel like so people would say to me, well, perhaps you're not meant to be here. And I say, no, I'm really happy to be here, but this is just how I'm expressing, I like negativity. It's about, the dark underside of daily moments. You can't be joyful all the time. So yeah, it's a funny old business, that.
So how did you find, because as a disabled person, who had, I understand, was quite embedded in disability community in London, how did you go about finding disability community here in Melbourne?
It was it's tough, isn't it? I think I was not frequenting the right circle. And I had not come intending to do disability work here, because my last tranche of work, I also make documentaries within the documentary making sector. And it was more just because I was thinking, I'm just not finding my tribe here. And I felt a huge urging to be back working in the disability sector where there were people like me. And when I say people like me, I find it amazing how in the disability community, notionally, there's a huge diversity, isn't there? Every possible diversity. And yet what we share really does shape how we connect with people. And it's quite a profound and precious thing. I actually got to say, I love the disability community. I love the way that we give space to each other's difference, and that respect is such a core part of how we communicate, and that it's framed in kindness, hopefully, maybe not all the time, but in theory, you know. And so I felt a real yearning to be back there. And so when I saw that the DRC were getting people on board, I was really drawn to it, and that certainly helped a lot of my sense of feeling like an outsider. And I remember when I was very young and I first discovered the disability community in London, and that was in the 80s, where there was lots of campaigning in the street. And the thing that was delightful was feeling, you know, an outsider with a whole pack of other outsiders. And then, but there is something problematic about this concept of an outsider, isn't there? Because actually, you know, that's the ableist part of us that is saying you don't belong in the thick of things. And there's also the social barriers that are preventing you being part of the community. So you can't really embrace outsidership, even though it's quite comfortable and feels dynamic and other and different and funky, you know. So there's a real problem with it, and that's sort of how my relationship with disability has changed over the years, is the sense of where actually the reality is that everybody feels like an outsider, and the way that you stop feeling like an outsider is when you have human connection, and human connection is incredibly powerful. When you have a series of human connections, you feel belonging, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so many thoughts.
I know, and I can tell you thinking, oh God, the outsider conversation, because it's complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that is really interesting, and really, yeah, I haven't actually examined that thought that much. Maybe because you are right. When you meet other outsiders, often disabled people, you are all outsiders together, and there is a real value in that and power in that and belonging, but it does keep you on the outside. And yeah, I haven't got enough thoughts around that right now to say more.
No, because it's a huge knitted ball of knots, isn't it? It's very difficult to unravel it. Yeah.
But I do think that trying to find it's coming back to finding your place when you land somewhere new, and finding connection and finding disability community. And I have thought about that, because I talk a lot about disability community, like it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I use my artwork to sort of create community. But part of why I'm doing that is because I think that we struggle as a community, and finding your way into the community is really, really hard. And I don't think, there's places, there are many places where you can connect. I think DRC is, you were lucky to, or maybe strategic that you managed to get there. I know that early on I joined, I found the brain injury community, and that was amazing. And to find other people like me, although I did for quite some time resist them, and I'd see them around and I'd be like running away because I didn't want to be part of it. So this is early on in my early years of my brain injury. But fast forwarding, because I can come back to that, but just I remember realizing that I was also connected to the mental in the mental health sector. That's where a lot of people with ABI end up. or they used to. We don't have a community mental health sector anymore. The NDIS has sort of got rid of all those spaces, but that's where a lot of people used to end up, and often by mistake. And I found that amazing because, you know, I found my tribe, I found other mad people. But I became aware that we're also really siloed, and that there was, you know, people with ABI here and people with intellectual disability here and people with madness here, and all those other disabled people who I'd never met, and I didn't know how to meet them. And it took a long time. And in recent years, I've had to, you know, try again. Do you have any tips? Do you have any tips on how people?
I think it's a fascinating thing, isn't it? Because I was talking to someone just this morning who was talking about how disability community historically was centred around particular organisations, and particular organisations evolved around particular disability, but that if you have a room full of people with one particular kind of disability, it narrows down your communication. There's a richness to having everybody together, but how do you do that? And when in the 80s there was a lot of funding going into disability art, so there'd be disability arts cabarets and music, and I know that in theory that still happens, but it's quite dispersed, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I think is useful, and I hope it's okay to dive there now, is that we are here at DRC, we have started a new program which is about addressing exactly this issue. And it's, when I call it a program, it's not a program, it's a vision. And we really want as many partners to join with this as possible. It's not something that DRC owns, it's a vision, which is that we want to connect every single person with a disability, ultimately in the world, but let's stick with Victoria for now. And the idea is that we meet together online, because as we were saying earlier, the online meeting spaces are incredibly democratically liberating for the disability community. Everybody can leap on with in some cases with some support, but the inaccessibility of the rest of the world makes it uniquely rich as a potentially linking tool. So we meet online in groups. But we've also just launched a chat platform on Discord, and we just think that absolutely everyone should become a member of this program, which is called Belong, and so that you can find your own connections. We're setting up a series of subgroups which are completely shaped by the members. So whatever members want to feel drawn to and want to huddle around in conversation is what we will support and form. So for instance, we've got a group that's formed, Lara, you can talk about this, about pain, living with pain.
Pain and gross and yuck stuff. That's our unofficial title. So yeah, it's a group where we come together to be, because we really identified that there is, it's really hard to talk about pain, and that we're not practiced at it, and that we avoid it because society and our family and our friends and lots of people around us don't want to hear us talk about pain. So I felt like I'd lost the language to talk about it. I just don't know anymore. So, but also an opportunity, all those everyday things that happen to you, which can be gross and yuck, and that you wish you could share, but mostly we never do. And so this is the space where we get to do that. It's quite sort of liberating as well as a bit icky. And I mean, it does feel icky when you're in it. And then afterwards I go, oh my God, we just talked about this thing and that thing. Yeah. So I want to take a step back, because I just want to let our audience know. So the Belong project started about a bit over a year ago. I was actually there at the beginning too. And yeah, it was about trying to create a space for disabled people to come together. And initially we were thinking, people who are isolated, and how do we support people who are isolated. But it's sort of become broader, and it's about everyone, because we all need connection. And for many of us, the last, particularly during COVID, it's increased our isolation. So I also want to say that during the last year and a bit, coming up to a year and a half, it has been a learning process. Like as we came together, and it was probably around about 15 of us at the start, maybe, and then more people have joined. But it's been a process of, trying to work out who we are, what we want to do, how we best meet. Initially, it was more about trying to create one-on-ones, and we've more moved to sort of mostly being groups. And they're small groups. It's not like overwhelmingly, like 50 people in a Zoom and you're struggling to have a voice. They're quite small. And I think the most important thing for me one of the important things is about trying to we have really strong, I guess, guidelines and rules of respect and kindness and listening and acknowledging. And so one of its strengths is it gives a space, if you come along and you need to talk, that you can do that and you can be heard, and you don't have to feel like you're taking up too much time. Because I think this is a common thing for lots of disabled people, is we're always being told to just minimize ourselves and fit in. And so I know that I find it hard to talk or to have a whinge or to talk about what's important without feeling like I'm taking up too much space. And that's one of the strengths we have. It also means we have to learn how to listen, which I think everyone needs to know more about. What do you say, Ali?
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, about what is the difference between the way that we get together to, say, a social group. Say if we wound up in a Zoom room for a chat, how would it be different? And I guess there are a few key things. And one is that our commitment to equality means that we make sure that everyone speaks and we check in with everybody in the room. And whilst it might be that one person's dealing with something particularly difficult and so they speak more than others, we're always looking for making sure that everybody is included and everybody has the space to share. So that's the key thing. But also, I guess that we're not there to fix anything. So we're there to what we call validate. And validate's a funny old word, isn't it? But it's to enable people to feel heard or understood. And so we're evolving a very interesting language with lots of signals, like, when we want people to feel that we hear them, or we really want to, we're giving them a big hug. And we will do that in the group. And it's become instinctive, and there's this language growing, and there's lots of celebrating. And so it's very much not about okay, how do we solve this problem? It's about being together and making sure that no one feels alone. I think one of the difficulties in our world, isn't it, is that sometimes when you feel like that, it's hard to know where to go. When you think, I just need to get this off my chest, and that's why GPs ended up having 15-minute slots, because people would go to the doctor to get something off their chest. And sometimes sitting in DRC before we set up the lawn, we'd be listening to the individual advocates, and they'd be doing the same thing. They're just hearing people. They couldn't get on with helping them because these people primarily need to be heard. Well, we can do that for each other. We can do that within our community way better than anyone else can. And so we're also putting these incredible resources that we all have as individuals together to good use to support one another.
Yeah, I want to follow up on something about we are the best placed to hear and listen to those issues we have. I'm just thinking about how, if you come upon a difficult situation and it's really irking you and you're quite upset, that the message you receive from society is that you must go and, see a counsellor, see a professional to talk to about that, or your GP, but I don't think GPs mostly are interested at all. But yeah, so you go and see a counsellor, and so I've tried that, but unfortunately they don't understand, because a lot of my issues that's happening, it's about ableism is at the core of it, or some other silencing of my identity, and they're not. One, they're not really au fait and understanding of ableism and disability. I actually don't think that necessarily they're trained to understand issues of identity either. But yeah, so when you come and when you talk to, a disabled friend, they get it immediately. And if you're creating a space, or if they're a good listener, then you can feel so much better. So yeah, we are doing something that is really important. And yeah, lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, easily done. I think we were talking as well about how precious it is to feel that you can take up space. So in a social group, you cannot go on about something till you feel exhausted, because there are social constraints, aren't there? And yet here we actually give people the license to do that, to say, if you need to keep talking, we're here to listen, and that's a sign of love and appreciation as well as respect, isn't it? And so there are some very deep relationships growing there, because we've heard people through some really difficult things. So yes, the moral of the story is that everybody should join along.
Yes, come and join us. That is it. And we're not just so as I said, we've been exploring and developing and working out who we are over the last year and a bit. And one of the things that we've done is sometimes we'll have a topic for each group, because if we need inspiration to talk, which we don't ever, but it is. Ali has particularly been, you've been really great at coming up with ideas and things to talk about, which are really, like, for example, managing, one was I didn't think I attended that group, but managing support workers in your life, or having that support. And that is a big issue for us, but no, we don't talk about it. Isn't acknowledged as a topic of conversation, or there's no workshop you go and do on it. But it is actually a really big issue. How do you manage the fact that we have support workers and carers in our lives, and how do we do that and still don't come away exhausted? Yeah, so things like different sort of topics have been really useful. Another one we've had a lot of talking about is just talking about what ableism is, and what does it mean to identify with disability or disabled. Lots of people, these aren't necessarily concepts that all disabled people have thought about or understand or have heard about, because they haven't necessarily been as lucky as we have to have got that education. For a long time, I didn't know what ableism meant. It wasn't until maybe about, I don't know, quite recently, maybe 7 years ago, that I first discovered the word ableism, and then everything made sense to me. But and then I realised that, that's not a given. Disabled people don't actually know what these words, this language, and they don't even know if it's okay to identify with disability. As you know, there are lots of messages in society that follows the medical model that says disability, is a bad thing, or it needs to be fixed and it needs to be managed. But we use the social model of disability and other affirmative models that see that disability is not just a part of human experience, but it's also a strength. I think that brings me to another question. What do you think is different about being in a room where everyone present identifies as disabled?
Oh, that's such a good question, isn't it? I think I'm not sure if we've covered this already, but the key is something that we in the group have started talking about as disability shorthand. And what this is a way, it's a realization that you don't have to fill in lots of background because everybody gets it already. And you can get right to the point and everybody gets it. And it's so satisfying. So I think there's a huge contextual depth of shared understanding in the room, which is valuable and quite beautiful. Is there anything else, Laura, that's different about a group?
Oh, lots. I've just made a note here because I'm thinking about how when you, there's a given, you don't have to do all that explaining. But one of the big differences I find, having recently gone to an event last week where my access needs were, I stated them and they've been ignored, and it was all quite annoying and horrific and unpleasant. But that when I'm in disability community or in a group where there's only disabled people, like, I don't have to define my disability. I don't have to tell people what my disability is. Like, no one is sitting there going, oh, what's her disability? Or in fact, I don't even feel like people are going, oh, is she disabled? Should she be here? Like, there isn't this sort of judgment about, do you belong here? It's just sort of like, oh, you're here, great, come in, join us. But I find that when I'm outside that space, I'm not able to just state my access needs. So maybe in disability community, I would say, this is what I need. But when I'm out in the real world and I say, these are my access requests, there's all this pressure I feel then to also define what my disability is. Like, people need to know how disabled I am. And I resent that greatly, but I keep falling into that trap. And I really appreciate when I'm in disability community because I get to practice not falling into that trap.
But isn't the thing about access needs is so such a useful concept, isn't it? Because we're basically saying, how can we make this the best possible experience for you? And obviously, people with disabilities are at the pointy end of access requirements, but all human beings have them, let's be frank. And what an amazing way to go about life is that when you're with a group of people, the first thing you're saying is, how can I make this best for you today? It's very caring, isn't it? And I think that the world generally has a great deal to learn from the way that we function in the disability community. What are you about to say, something?
I was going to say two things. I was going to quote Mia Mingus, who is a US disability activist, and one of her quotes is, access is love. But that idea, it is kindness. It is being caring to say, what can I do to make you feel better and connect with me? And the other thing I was going to say, I've forgotten.
So we're going back to your question about what's different in the room. I think that there's an evolving, this is basically what we're talking about here, is disability culture. It's about how we do things. And although what I find interesting about disability culture is, although that you can point to key people in the civil rights movement and you can feel grateful about where we've come from, there's very little constant evaluation about what does it mean to be part of the disability community. How are we shaping our culture? So we might know who stands behind us, but what about what does this culture really mean in terms of day-to-day living? I think there's a huge amount of work here that I'd love us all in the Belong community to be part of sharing and informing, and partly informing good practice, but also we're evolving social concepts here, you know.
We are. I was going to say another aspect of Belong that we are working towards or evolving is the idea of how can we create change. So having conversations about issues, about culture, and then looking to sort of broaden that to actual action on the ground. And of course, as all our listeners will know, one of my passions is disability pride. And that's something we've also talked about in the group, this idea of what does it mean to be proudly disabled. It's sort of still quite a new term in Australia, I think, for lots of people. So having lots of conversations around that. But yeah, looking towards taking action as well. We're not just, our plan is not just to sit around and navel gaze and build each other up. I mean, these things are really important. I don't know, even the navel gazing is important, but we are looking also to, like, how can we change? How can we make things change? Yeah.
Yes, we had an induction workshop earlier today for the next lot of members for the network, and a key question was well, how are we contributing to systemic advocacy? And it was like, hooray, yes, we're doing that too. But because, you know, it's really, really important, isn't it, that this feeds into social change. So, of course, in July, we have Disability Pride Month, and we really want to contribute to that in a visual and what am I better word for visual? Yes, we want to contribute to that.
Oh, no, I'm thinking we also want to create connections and community. We want to create conversations and because as you say, all the work we're doing, it's about building this idea of disability culture. What is our culture? And then, because we can't really act, it's harder to act if you don't hold the idea of your culture being important and integral to yourself. If you don't have that, and if you don't understand that disability is a source of strength rather than a source of shame. Of course, we all experience shame through the actions of ableism, but that knowing that shame doesn't inherently belong within us, it belongs to the attitudes of society. Yeah. So July is going to be exciting.
Yeah, it really is, and it is wonderful being part of those discussions about pride, and that's been a resurfacing topic regularly, hasn't it? And there are some people for whom they just never heard it before in the context of disability, and are grappling with it still. And I guess the point is that we're all at different stages of our journey, but that there's so much to learn from each other, no matter where we are. And it feels like a really critical time to be coming together too, as we all, as a wider society, embrace advocacy. Diversity was the word I was looking for, because it really is the great richness, isn't it? In diversity is where human beings show their splendour. Who wants a homogenous society? Nobody.
Yeah, and coming back to that. Two thoughts. Sorry, guys. I keep getting too many thoughts and losing my spot. But intersectionality, I was going to say, I mean, I think what we're trying to do too, and what I think lacks in some parts because of the siloing that's happened, and often, you know, disability rights movement has historically had most of the power has been given to white men who straight and often physically disabled, so visibly disabled, like a wheelchair user. So and that's shifted over the years, and of course, you know, feminists and disabled people have set up, you know, great projects over the years, but it's something we're really trying to recognize within the diversity of disability. It's not just about different disability, but it's also the huge diversity of our experiences, and recognizing that certain groups like people of colour and Indigenous people and queer people and cold people have often been left outside, and we are really actively trying to address that. Yeah. Do you want me to go on to my second point, or did you have either of you?
No, go on. What was the second point?
The second point was that, oh my God, when disabled people get together, and we're in community, every time almost every time I go, oh my God, we've got something here that the rest of the people in the world need to know about.
Mm-hmm.
When we get together, there's this display of embracing of difference and this acceptance of difference. There's presumably because we have existed on the margins, we're less likely to, we're not as, the power of peer pressure, I suppose, doesn't have the same power on us, hold on us. And so we're much more practiced and better at difference, at embracing people who are different and giving people space. And oh my God, I just wish I could bottle this or do something and send it out to the rest of the world. What do you think?
I completely agree. I was just wanting to add to those marbles that are in the bottle, because there's also there's a very good humanistic set of principles that we work with. Like, it's not about personal achievement. There's a real sense of the need to support one another, and I really think that we take that beyond our group. It's something that we carry around with us because of our experiences in life. Yes, it's like a very it's community. It's community in its purest sense, in that there's a community consciousness and a need to. I'm losing my words suddenly.
And I also just want to say, Julie, feel free to butt in if you have some thoughts or you have a question for Ali or even myself. Yeah, but I don't want to put you on the spot either. So
I'm just enjoying the conversation, and what I've been taking away, I've been writing some things as we go through. One of the beautiful things in disability, I mean, like the group that Larissa and I work for at the moment, it's called Diversity and Disability, and we really focus on strength-based, rather than what we can't do. And I really love working in the sector, or the groups I'm with, because it's all about what can I do for you, and together we can do a lot. And I mean, it doesn't matter how able you are in the ableistic world. There are things you can't do. They were just like, it's impossible to know how to do everything. And so this idea of, what can I do for you? And as you both mentioned, it's kindness, it's inclusiveness, it's from cradle to grave mentality, which I'm really passionate about, universal language and a universal world. And how to create change. So I think it all starts with language. And your theory is language in the world of academia. I think that's where it all starts, I believe. So I think we're really good space. We're really good spaces to actually, push that in the wider community, and push it and model it. When we're modelling things, people feel good about themselves. Perhaps they could go out, it's like pay it forward, I suppose. They could go out, and maybe see that benefit to others that they come across.
Mm-hmm. Lots of crossover there in the values, isn't there? Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting what you say about language. I do think language is key, but I don't think it's the only thing at the forefront of change. I think it's about willingness and creating space for it. Yeah.
And for me, it's about connection. It's about when we connect, and then we connect with more people, then that, that creates these ripples.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So language is in the mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like, big words or, or technical words or, the most simplest messages are the best. And I'm very deeply involved in my faith community. And our pastor was a lovely guy, approached things from a very intellectual position, which, a lot of the parishioners are, from a whole background, the majority of us are, and I think the things he was saying quite often went over people's head. And the current priest is much more, like his language is much more accessible, and it's the thing he brought to this parish was a humility, like a deep humility. And that's not to say that the other priests didn't have humility. I think he just overestimated and didn't not come down, but didn't approach the sermons at the level he needed to be. That's a sign of intelligence, because when you have to talk to the people and help them to understand quite difficult concepts at times. So yes, I think language is really important in life.
I think, I mean, language is a big issue that's often talked about by disabled people, because language is often used. Some people do use language as a way to exclude others, and plain English is something that many parts of the community have been fighting for. Plain English in documents. Like, how hard is it to fill out all these forms that you need to get your ID? And if they just made it more accessible and used plain language, or some parts of the community, as we know, prefer easy English.
But when I'm writing things, I tend to go to easy plain English. So everyone can understand things that are written, not only those who can read, those who don't have any other issues to do with language and cold issues and literacy. So that's what I always aim for.
Yes, I do understand what you mean.
Oh no, go on.
No, I just wanted to make sure that if anyone was listening, that we should let them know where to find belong in the world.
That's a good point. Please tell us.
So if you do identify with someone with a disability, just don't miss the opportunity to go to drc.org.au, and on there you will find a sign-up place for Belong. And you can come along and give it a whirl and see what you make of it. And it's all shaped by its members. So you could join the steering committee and have a say in how it's run, or you can feedback what would make it work for you. We're incredibly open and flexible.
Yeah. And there's also, I mean, some things we've done, we've identified that we needed some training in a particular area. And so there's opportunities for that too. So it's not just, there's a whole lot of give and take and building and yeah.
So I'll put that link on our comments page on our channel.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's great. I hope you join too.
Yes, I'll be looking into it definitely. So I like the icky workshop. The icky discussing.
Absolutely.
I think we've also had some icky things happen. I can tell you some lovely stories about, or not so lovely stories about when I had my colostomy bag.
When you had what?
A colostomy bag.
Oh, okay.
So that was pretty icky. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's really funny because they send you all these magazines in the mail. Telling you can skydive, and that's really shit hitting the fan. Like, seriously. Yeah, but I have a good laugh about it now. I did have a good laugh over it then too. But like, seriously, like, I wouldn't dream about going skydiving with a colostomy bag. Yeah, so and I know what they're trying to do is to make people feel better in that, you can do anything you want to do, but I think that sometimes it's a bit taken to the extreme. Yeah.
All right. So my brain has gone blank about any further questions I have for you, Ali.
Well,
have you got something?
We are nearly at the end. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. All right. Are there any other things, Ali, that you would like to mention?
Well, I wondered if, oh no, that might be a bit repetitive, but I'm really interested. This notion of tribe, right? Do you walk into a room and think, I feel at home here? How does it happen? Is it just, well, can you just talk to me a bit about when now you experience that sensation and why did it happen?
Can I talk to that at all?
Yeah.
So I've just joined another organisation, and I can mention their name. It's Women's Disability Victoria. I think I was their last recruit. I've been with them now over 12 months, and so I've been working in the disability centre for quite a while now, and as soon as I walked into the space on Zoom, I just felt these women are my tribe, and I think it's what you guys were saying about you don't have to explain things because people, even though we don't have the exact same experience, we've all experienced discrimination because of disability or ableism. And it was just a really calm feeling I received, and everyone's been respectful and everyone's given time to speak. And as you can appreciate, there are different levels of communication needs and access needs, and it's all embraced. And I think that's the key. And there was lots of respect, and I think Women's Disability Victoria do it really well. The gender and disability unit that Lara and I are in, it's all about what can I do for you, and it's what can we do for each other. So it's all about like supporting, empowering each other, and going out into the world and making change. I felt very comfortable in that space as soon as I walked into it.
Fascinating. I'm just interested in that whole process of recognizing that and what is it that comes across and what are we picking up? Do you relate to that experience?
Yes, I do, but I'd have to think a bit more on what it is that makes that happen and what the feeling is. I do know that in recent years I have worked out that I actually need to be more strategic about where I choose spaces to feel safe. Like, I think there's nothing worse than going into a space where you think you're going to be safe, you think it's going to be great, and it turns out it's not. And that is almost, that feels worse than going in knowing that, you might have to, not completely fit in. But so I've, to keep myself safe, I've been, prioritising finding community within queer and disability artistic spaces. And so focusing on my own identity, I'm an artist, I'm queer, I'm disabled. So, finding a space where, people are more like me. But the risk with that is that I am not necessarily, I'm narrowing down the diversity potentially. So yeah, so I'm still keen to sort of make sure I keep connecting to spaces that are broader. And I think one of the things that makes it safe, these spaces, is knowing that either I can let them know before I go what my access needs are, or when I get there, I'm going to feel comfortable and brave enough. I mean, I shouldn't have to feel brave, but most of the time we have to sort of get that courage up to say, hey, you know, I need this, to be able to, like for me, it's like flash photography. I'm coming across flash photography everywhere and I can't stay in a space where that's happening. And so having that confidence to say, hey, I can't do that, and for that to be respected and not questioned, it's just like, oh, okay, that's what we'll do. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts on this issue of the idea of tribe and how do you know when you find it. Yeah.
I'd like to thank Ali Scott and as usual, my very, very brave and wonderful co-host, Larissa McFarlane. Love your work, Larissa, in every space that you're in. So very privileged to have you as a co-facilitator. Well, thank you very much. And we'll say goodbye for now.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Happy Easter.
Ali. Thanks, Julie.
Catch us on Your Life, Your Voice YouTube channel, live every Monday fortnight or on demand.
We would like your comments and suggestions on topics that you would like us to explore. Leave your comments on YouTube comment section.
Please feel free to email us on dndyourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com or contact us via the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Inc. Phone number 1300 676 044. 1300 676 044.
Diversity in Disability is a project of the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Incorporated, and would like to thank the management for funding this project, especially living through the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for people with disabilities living in isolation.